Someone says, can you please describe what is anarchism in the modern practical sense? I only have the image of anarchism as basically Zombieland, and I assume that that's not what you mean by saying you're an anarchist. No, it's not what I mean. I don't mean Zombieland. Anarchism is abolishment of hierarchy, like just a loose definition, and hierarchy in the sense of both economic and political are the main hierarchies. Basically, it's thinking everybody should be equal in terms of their powers towards each other. In a way, broadly, there's nuances as always, but politically, we are not democratic. There's people above us who make decisions for us. We might elect them, but they still have power to make decisions that will impact us without us being able to have necessarily a voice in them, or our voice is very limited. And economically, we're not equal to others because we rely on a group of rich people to allow us to give us jobs, for example. So you can choose who you work for, but you can't choose to work for someone else unless you start your own YouTube channel and you're very privileged to be able to work for yourself. But that's very, very hard, obviously. So most people are forced to work for an employer, and just by virtue of working for an employer, there's this inequality of power between you and the employer. Just inequality in wealth shows that some people have more power than you. Because if you agree with me that wealth is power, then people having 10 times your wealth have 10 times your power. And I don't think you can necessarily call yourself a democratic society when some people have 10 times your power. One day I'll have an anarchist on and we can discuss about that a bit more in depth. It's hard to talk about that as a monologue and not have this interchange or this exchange of ideas. How does one maintain anarchy? There's this assumption in anarchist theory that once people free themselves, they won't want to go back to a system of oppression or a system of hierarchy by virtue of being free. For example, when we got rid of monarchy, what stops us from going back to monarchy isn't the idea that democracy is stopping us from going back to monarchy. There's no force or power to stop us from going back to monarchy. We don't want to go back to monarchy just because it's an oppressive system. Once you emancipate yourself from a system that is bad, for example, monarchy, then once you're emancipated from that, you don't want to go back to it. And maintaining anarchy is the same way we're maintaining anti-monarchy, in the sense that people will emancipate themselves from the need to subjugate themselves to a boss or to a politician. Through this emancipation, through this process of emancipation, there's no reason or material reasons for them to want to go back to their previous state. Again, this is like a 1 minute answer to what could be a 2 hour conversation. Roman says, would it be really interesting to see you in a conversation with Cuck Philosophy? Yeah, Cuck Philosophy is not, well, they're not Cuck Philosophy anymore. I don't know what their name is anymore, but yeah, no, they're one of the videos that they made, and I'm going to recommend it, and I'm going to link it right now, or I'm just going to show it. No, I'm going to link it as well. So, Cuck Philosophy, for those who don't know him, is he a Marxist? I don't even know if he made a video on, he wrote a book actually about Marx and Nietzsche. This is the video, and with a charming gentleman. There you go. So why equality is unhelpful as a political goal. And I remember clicking on that video thinking, and it's like the thumbnail is like the face of Karl Marx. Here's the video. Don't click on it now though. Stay on the stream, please. But watch it after. And I'm going to take off Jordan Peterson from the screen. But yeah, no, that video, why equality is unhelpful as a political goal, I clicked on it thinking, all right, this guy's going to be anti-Marx or whatever, even though he made leftist videos before. So I was like, maybe he turned, or maybe he's disavowing himself from the left or whatever. But that video is actually about how Marx wasn't preaching equality as a political goal, but saw the end of capitalism not as like it's taking off chains rather than enforcing equality in a way. It's super interesting. I would 100% look into it. Like, he talks about equality being more of he says here, equality of prisons. So it's the whole idea that, by having equality, when you're focused on equality, you're not focusing on the systems that actually maintain inequalities. So it's the whole more female drone pilots and things like that. That would be more equality. But yeah, no, a conversation with Cut Philosophy. Like, I haven't really watched their videos lately, but I would definitely love a conversation with Jonas Saika. That's their name. GC says, that is a fair answer. I would like to learn more about anarchy myself. Being conservative, I don't hear about it much. I feel like that's fair. I like this comment, because I think that anarchism may have a through its criticism of the state, though it does criticize capitalism, don't get me wrong, but through its criticism of the state, might be good at appealing to conservative conservative I don't know how to say it, like skepticism to more leftism in general. Because the whole idea, because I feel like a lot of conservatives, what they fear from the left and from socialism in general is the big government, and it's the intrusion of individual liberty. And I think that anarchism has this view of liberty that's a lot more emancipating than the conservative view of liberty. And because of that, it might be a bit more appealing. For example, for like freedom for a conservative is, and correct me if I'm wrong, GC, and there's many strains of conservatism as well, but it's the don't tread on me kind of freedom. The don't touch my guns, don't step on my land, don't fuck with what like my life, basically. But the understanding of power that anarchists have, I feel, is more might be compelling, in the sense that it's negative freedom basically. But so the idea of negative freedom being like, don't impair me and just let me be. But what anarchism does is more of a positive freedom, where it's saying not only let me be, but enable me to do stuff that I want to do. So basically, if you tell someone, all right, just let me be or whatever, if you tell people the state is going to let you be and do whatever, people can still be lacking in freedom to a point where they're enslaved. For example, if the state just says, we'll let you be, we won't interfere or whatever, then there's a lot of freedom, but a lot of people are going to be forced into working for shit wages, and for they'll choose their bosses, but they'll always have to work for a boss. They'll always have this authority over them all the time, unless they start their own business, which is really, really hard for many reasons, especially in a world where more and more big businesses are taking over markets and creating monopolies, i.e. Amazon. So this idea of positive liberty, saying not only are we saying we're not going to interfere in your life, but also as a community, you can allow yourselves to say, all right, well, we're going to work together so that we can all be free together. It's a I don't know how to say it, but it's, yeah. Again, the positive freedom of anarchism is very might be more interesting to a conservative if they can understand like the whole dichotomy, or the whole clash between positive and negative freedom. Yeah, David or David, I don't know, but letting people be and do whatever freedoms is for them, they go against the definition of freedom to others. And yeah, that's the anarchist criticism of that kind of freedom. My freedom to take all the land and defend it with guns, and forcing people therefore to work my land because they have no other land to work on, might be freedom because you're free to do that. but you're also forcing people to work for you and to have you as their authority. And that's basically what's happening now. Yeah, Duterra's, yeah, exactly. Conservative libertarians are closer to being anarchists than many of them believe they are, and are probably some of the most primed to convert to anarchism given much adjustment on social issues. Absolutely, I really agree with that. And we've seen that often happen. You know, a lot of libertarians will turn to libertarian socialists or, anarchism, because they already see that, they already have a criticism of authoritarianism. They have a criticism of, they have a view of the world that's very critical of anything that takes away your freedom. And I feel like if you're a conservative libertarian and you say, I don't want the government to take away my freedom, well, the leap is not that far away to say, well, the government is taking away freedoms from you, but your boss, who you work for 40 hours a week, who tells you how, which words to use, which clothes to wear, which sentences to say, when you smile, when you don't, when you can go to in some cases, when you can go to the bathroom and when you can't, that guy is much more impairing your freedom than you do, than the government does. That person is much more of an authority over your life than the government is, right? And once, if you can have that, if you can make someone understand that, then I feel like it might be a way to have the pipeline, the conservative libertarian to socialist libertarian pipeline. Do I follow Chomsky? Page says or asks, read his books. I don't follow him. I know he does a lot of interviews often recurrently online, but I don't follow them as much. No, I've read a lot of his books though. Yeah. Panos is spamming. What do you think about communism? Have you familiarized yourself with the Marxist critique of anarchism, of it being petty bourgeoisie? I'll be honest, I haven't looked that much into the criticism. I've more engaged with people criticizing anarchism. I had a Marxist professor in uni, and his criticism of anarchism, and I feel like they're good criticism. For example, how to defend the revolution. I think there are ways to defend a revolution. Not that the revolution's coming in any way, but I don't know if I want to get into that. It's a really long and complicated answer and a complicated question. But basically, my view of anarchism is, because for example, defending a revolution through the state, through the concentration of power, is a lot easier. Obviously, you have more resources to and more a chain of command that allows you to have a more militarized and maybe organized, but organized more authoritatively, way of defending your revolution. Absolutely. But in my conception of anarchism, defending anarchy is going to be a lot easier to do, because in my head, anarchism has to come from a vast majority of people, to an extent where the counter-revolution has to be done by a very small fraction of the population. Because if you need to defend your revolution to a point where you're super outnumbered, then, what you're doing is not a revolution. You're not emancipating yourself. You're trying to emancipate everybody else. And I don't think people should emancipate everybody else. Let's say 30% of people are into are anarchists, and they do a revolution, because 30% of the population is a lot of people. Then yes, you do have to protect your revolution and from any counter-revolutionary threats, but at the same time, 70% of your population is against you. People aren't liberating themselves at that point. You're trying to liberate them, and that's profoundly anti-anarchist in itself. You can't liberate people. People have to have their own, and that's my critique of Marxism and of more of the authoritarian communism, is the whole idea that a revolution, if it's not from a majority or a very strong majority, basically it has to come from a large majority enough of the population so that they can defend their own revolution themselves. Defending yourself from the American army or the CIA is going to be hard though. Authoritarian or not, it's going to be hard. Yeah, Tank Red says follow him around, check his every steps. I'm assuming you're talking about Chomsky. That's what I was thinking as well. I wanted to make a joke about that, but I don't know. I don't know how to frame it. Azia says, are you an atheist? Yes, I am. I made a video on spirituality not long ago, and Tarkovsky, the filmmaker. And I say in there that I'm an atheist. I don't believe in God. Many anarchists also don't believe in God. GC says that makes sense to me. I am definitely for the state, but I don't like the consumerist corporatocracy we have in America. See, you already sound like an anarchist to me, GC. You don't sound conservative at all, as you were saying earlier. Comrade GC, someone called conveniently Détournement, says, what are your thoughts on Debord situationism and the spectacle? Have I made a video on the spectacle? I think I have. I don't remember. I didn't make the video on the spectacle, but was it on my video about the trapped artist? I think trapped artists about Nirvana and Banksy. I think I mentioned the spectacle in that video. There's also this artist that I've been wanting to do a video on for the longest time, but I don't have the inspiration for. He actually was a friend of Debord and was part of the Situationist International, if I remember correctly. Like, he wrote books with Debord. Yeah, he was part of the. He was actually one of the founders of the Situationist International. His name is Asger Jorn. He wrote, I think 2 or 3 books. Actually, kind of funny. Let me show you. Yeah, I'm looking at his images, but I'm not showing you. There you go. This guy. Ugh. Open image in new tab. Oh, great. Is this better? Yeah, that's better. And that was his way of doing détournement. The duck. I think that's ugly duckling. I think that's my favorite. Yeah, the ugly duckling is the worrying duck, actually, my favorite. I really like these where he painted over, or like he detourned, I guess. More like kitsch paintings. Very inspiring. But yeah, he won. He was awarded a Guggenheim Award, which in 1964, which gave him a lot of money, and he sent a telegram to Harry F. Guggenheim, which was the president, in caps. So I imagine he's yelling. I'm not going to yell here, but he says, "Go to hell with your money, bastard. Stop. Refuse price. Stop. Never asked for it. Stop. Against all decency, mix artist against his will in your publicity. Stop. I want public confirmation not to have participated in your ridiculous game. Signed, Jorn." Calls Guggenheim a bastard after Guggenheim's like, "Hey, you won a prize. Let me give you some money." Pretty funny guy. David says, thoughts on Hobbes and his work, The Leviathan. I had to read segments of The Leviathan in college, but I think this whole idea of human nature and the state of nature, because at least that's the frame through which I had to read it in college. The whole idea of like contract theory and human nature and the state of nature, I find it, as soon as I had to like engage with it, immediately I was like, well, there's no such thing as the state of nature, which I know is like hypothetical, but like humans evolved socially, there's no such thing as a state of nature, and trying to understand society as like social contract theory and things like that, it doesn't work with me. I feel like it's a justification of power that just feels like a retroactive justification. There's a word for that, but I don't remember exactly what it is. But yeah, it's like trying to justify the way things are and justify the inequalities that this thing enables, but doing it, to me, not very not doing it convincingly. Rousseau was interesting for that, because I like Rousseau. He has a quote critiquing private property, but like critiquing it like in a very, very well way. It's a long quote, but it's totally worth it. Let me read it to you. "The first man who, having enclosed a piece of ground," that means putting a fence around it, "bethought himself of saying, 'This is mine,'" saying "this is mine" to the piece of ground, "and found people simple enough to believe him, was the real founder of civil society." From how many crimes, wars, and murders, from how many horror and misfortunes, might not anyone have saved mankind by pulling up the stakes or filling up the ditch and crying to his fellows, "Beware of listening to this impostor. You are undone if you once forget that the fruits of the earth belong to us all, and the earth itself to nobody." Like, he's basically a communist, right? Like, my interpretation of it is this guy's a communist. He's saying the earth doesn't belong to anybody, and the fruits that the earth gives is everybody's, right? And he, not only is he saying that the earth and its fruits belong to everybody, but he's also saying whoever decides to say that it's his, that this earth is his, that the fruits of the earth are his or hers, he's enabling crime, wars, and murders, horrors and misfortunes. If you can trace back horrors, misfortunes, crimes, war, and murders to private property, as Rousseau is doing in this quote, I feel like he can decently call himself a commie. Nitai says, yeah, I like when you go off on little showcase tangents. That's like halfway reaction content already. Yeah. I'm getting there. It's fun to show. I just feel bad to just watch a video and, pause to comment on it from time to time. I don't know if I'll have enough to say about it or whatever. I'll do it eventually, I promise.